The arrival of the Invincible force. The sky was clear that morning, with only a few clouds drifting lazily across the horizon. But everything changed in an instant. The peaceful sky was suddenly shattered by a deafening roar. A blinding light flashed, and then, as if the heavens themselves were breaking apart, massive shapes began to emerge from the clouds. They weren't airplanes, and they weren't meteorites. They were something far worse. The world watched in shock as colossal alien ships descended from the sky, their dark metallic surfaces reflecting the sun. Each ship was larger than any building ever made by humans. The ships moved with terrifying speed and precision, landing in cities across the globe. The ground trembled beneath their massive weight as they touched down, sending shockwaves through the surrounding areas. In New York City, people rushed out of their homes, looking up in horror at the sight above them. The once bustling streets were now eerily silent as the alien ships loomed over them. These invaders weren't like any creatures the world had ever imagined. Their ships were sleek, with smooth curves and sharp angles. There were no windows, no visible weapons, just a vast, overpowering presence. The alien ships hovered above the cities, slowly rotating. There was no communication, no message, just an overwhelming sense of power. The humans had no idea what to do. Governments scrambled to understand what was happening, but there was no time. The world had never faced anything like this before. As the minutes passed, people tried to make sense of what was happening. News stations broadcasted the images of the alien ships, their shiny surfaces almost mocking humanity's small, fragile world. Every country's military began to mobilize, but deep down, everyone knew they were outmatched. The technology the aliens possessed was beyond anything Earth had ever seen. At a military base in Nevada, General Thomas Anderson stood in front of a large screen, staring at the alien ships hovering in space. The sheer size of them made his stomach turn. The best intelligence officers and scientists were in the room with him, but no one had an answer. The aliens didn't respond to any of the human attempts to communicate. They simply watched from above, as if waiting for something. "We're not prepared for this," General Anderson muttered, his voice barely a whisper. The others in the room exchanged nervous glances. He was right. Earth's military had never faced an enemy like this. Weapons, technology, and tactics that had been used to fight wars for centuries suddenly seemed useless. These aliens didn't need to show any force to make humanity feel powerless. In the days that followed, humanity's worst fears were confirmed. The aliens did not come in peace. They began to attack, starting with the largest cities on Earth. In London, Paris, Tokyo, and Moscow, their ships unleashed a devastating energy blast that destroyed entire buildings in seconds. The people in these cities didn't stand a chance. The blasts were quick, efficient, and without mercy. All attempts to fight back were in vain. Fighter jets and military vehicles were no match for the aliens' technology. Every missile, every bomb, was either easily deflected or destroyed by the alien ships. It was as if the aliens were simply toying with humanity, showing their superiority without a single word being spoken. In Washington, D.C., President Sarah Green sat in her office, watching the destruction unfold on her screen. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the armrests of her chair. She had seen wars, disasters, and conflict, but nothing compared to this. The sheer scale of the destruction was unimaginable. "We need to act fast," one of her advisors said, his voice shaky. "We need to find a way to fight back." But President Green knew, deep down, that their chances of winning were slim. How could they fight something so powerful, so invincible? It felt like a nightmare, one that no one could wake up from. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, there was something inside her, a small spark of hope that refused to go out. Maybe they weren't done yet. Meanwhile, in a small town in the Midwest, Jack Holt, a former military strategist, watched the news with his wife, Anna. Jack had seen countless battles and wars, but nothing like this. He knew that humanity didn't stand a chance unless they fought back. But how could they? As the days passed, Jack began to gather a small group of military and tech experts. They would need to act quickly before the entire planet fell under alien control. The world was on the brink of disaster, and Jack knew that humanity needed a plan, even if it seemed impossible. The aliens, meanwhile, were unbothered by any resistance. Their ships remained in place, silently observing, waiting. But one thing was clear: they were not here to negotiate. The invasion had begun, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. The streets of every major city were filled with chaos. People ran, screamed, and tried to flee, but there was no escape. The alien ships blocked the sky, their vast shadows casting a cold, dark veil over the Earth. It was as though the world had been plunged into an endless night. And still, the aliens did not speak. They did not demand surrender or make any threats. They simply watched. It was as if they were waiting for humanity to give in, to submit to their power. But something inside the human spirit would not allow it. The battle for Earth had just begun, and no matter how invincible the aliens seemed, humanity would find a way to fight back. The world was in turmoil, but as the first alien ship had landed, one thing was clear: the fight for survival had started. And no one knew how it would end. Humanity's desperation. The world had plunged into chaos. Major cities had been reduced to rubble, and the once bustling streets were now eerily silent. People huddled together in fear, praying for a miracle. Governments around the world struggled to react, but it was clear that they were outmatched. The alien invaders, with their superior technology and overwhelming force, had crushed any hope of immediate defense. Humanity was on the brink of collapse. In Washington, D.C., President Sarah Greene sat in an emergency meeting, surrounded by her top advisors and military officials. The situation had grown dire, and time was running out. The news from every corner of the globe was the same: devastation. The aliens had already destroyed the world's most advanced military bases, rendering Earth's best weapons useless. How did this happen? One of the generals asked, his voice trembling. We should have been prepared. Our best minds were focused on possible threats, but nothing came close to this. President Greene, her face pale, glanced around the room. Fear was visible in everyone's eyes. The alien ships hovered above, a constant reminder that Earth had no defense against their invaders. The alien ships didn't even need to fire their weapons. The mere sight of their vast power was enough to make any army retreat in terror. We need to think of something fast, President Greene said, her voice shaking but resolute. We can't just sit back and let them take over. The military officers and strategists at the table nodded in agreement, but the room fell into silence as the harsh reality settled in. What could they possibly do? Their weapons, their technology, their strategies, all of it seemed worthless against an enemy who had the power to annihilate them with a single strike. Across the globe, the story was the same. In London, scientists and military leaders gathered in underground bunkers, trying to come up with a solution, but it felt like an impossible task. The alien ships were too powerful, too advanced. Nothing in Earth's arsenal could stop them. It was as if the aliens had known exactly where to strike to cripple humanity's response. And worse, they hadn't even shown their full force yet. At the United Nations, diplomats from around the world convened, hoping to come up with some kind of strategy. But the tension in the air was palpable. No one had an answer. The aliens had made it clear that they were not here to negotiate, and with each passing hour, Earth's chances of survival seemed to slip further away. Meanwhile, in the streets of every major city, fear and panic spread. People ran in every direction, trying to escape the aliens' grasp. But there was nowhere to hide. The ships blocked the sky, casting long shadows over the Earth, and the humans who tried to flee were either captured or killed. Resistance seemed futile. But amid the growing despair, there were whispers of hope. Small groups of civilians and military personnel began to organize. They weren't large in number, but they were determined. They refused to believe that humanity was doomed to extinction. They knew they had to fight back, no matter the odds. One such group was led by Jack Holt, a former military strategist who had seen his share of battles. He wasn't ready to give up yet. Jack had spent days trying to piece together what little they knew about the alien invaders. He studied their movements, their weapons, and their tactics. He knew that humanity's survival depended on understanding their enemy. But time was running out. "We can't just wait for them to wipe us out," Jack said to his team, a mix of soldiers, scientists, and engineers. "We need to act now, before they completely take over." His team nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They were working on a plan, something that might give humanity a fighting chance. Jack had spent sleepless nights studying alien technology that had been recovered from earlier skirmishes, but it was slow progress. The aliens' technology was far beyond anything Earth had ever seen, and they had no idea how to break it. "We need to find their weakness," Jack continued. "If we can't fight them head-on, we have to find a way to outsmart them." The resistance group knew that they had no time to waste. If they didn't act quickly, the aliens would destroy what little remained of human civilization. Their first task was to locate any remaining sources of alien technology that they could study. But the risk of being discovered was high. The alien ships were always watching, always hovering overhead, ready to strike. As Jack and his team began their mission, the world outside continued to crumble. Alien forces were sweeping across every major city, capturing anyone they could find. The people who remained were either hiding or being taken prisoner. The resistance, a small flicker of hope in the midst of global devastation, moved cautiously but steadily. Every step they took brought them closer to uncovering the truth about the invaders, and they hoped, a way to fight back. But even as they worked, the alien forces grew more aggressive. Their ships were moving closer, their weapons more powerful with each passing day. It seemed like the battle for Earth was lost, but Jack and his team refused to give up. In secret, in dark corners of the world, a war was brewing. A war not fought with bombs and guns, but with the determination and resilience of a species that refused to be conquered. The aliens had made their presence known. Now, humanity was about to show them what they were truly capable of. Time was running out, but for the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope. And that hope lay in the hearts of those who still believed that humans could fight back against the so-called invincible force. The resistance forms. Days had passed since the alien invasion began, and Earth's resistance was growing, albeit slowly. While governments continued to falter under the pressure of the alien onslaught, small groups of survivors and military personnel were beginning to organize. Jack Holt, the former military strategist, had become a central figure in this movement. Despite the overwhelming odds, he refused to let humanity surrender without a fight. In a hidden underground bunker deep in the mountains, Jack and his team of experts huddled together. The world above was in turmoil, but in this secret location, a flicker of hope burned in their hearts. They knew they couldn't win with sheer force alone. The alien ships were too powerful, their technology too advanced. But if they could gather enough information and work together, they might find a way to turn the tide. "We can't keep waiting for them to slip up," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We need to take the fight to them, but we need to know what we're up against first." His team nodded, each person fully aware of the risks involved. The aliens had begun to patrol the skies more frequently, and their ships had grown even larger and more numerous. Jack knew that the longer they waited, the harder it would be to strike back. The group spent the following days gathering every scrap of alien technology they could find. It wasn't easy. Alien patrols were everywhere, watching and waiting. But Jack and his team managed to infiltrate abandoned military bases, covertly entering alien-occupied zones in search of anything that could help. Every piece of alien tech they recovered was meticulously studied, though it seemed impossible to understand. The language was foreign, the designs alien. Yet with each breakthrough, No matter how small, they grew closer to uncovering the secret to defeating these invaders. Meanwhile, the world around them was falling apart. News outlets broadcasted the continued devastation. Cities lay in ruins, their once bustling streets now silent graveyards of humanity's pride. Alien forces controlled everything: energy, communication, even food supplies. Earth's major cities had fallen. And still, the aliens did not speak. Their ships floated in the skies like an ever-present reminder of the helplessness that humanity felt. The invaders didn't need to do anything more than exist. Their power, their presence alone, was enough to crush any remaining spirit of resistance. But in the darkest corners of the Earth, humanity was refusing to give up. In underground bunkers, small bands of soldiers and civilians were training for a fight they knew they might not survive. They understood that their chance for victory lay in using the alien technology against them. "We need to stop thinking like we're fighting them with the same old tactics," said Dr. Eva Patel, a scientist who had joined Jack's group. She was one of the few who managed to escape the initial attack in New Delhi. "We have to think differently, understand their weaknesses. It's our only chance." Her words resonated with the others. They had all realized that traditional weapons would never defeat the aliens. The alien ships were indestructible to human weapons. The best hope now was to find a way to disable their technology, perhaps to shut down their ships, or at the very least, find some form of communication that could be used against them. As Jack's team worked tirelessly, they uncovered a shocking discovery. Among the wreckage of an alien ship they had infiltrated, they found something unexpected. A device that seemed to be a communication system, far more advanced than any human technology. It appeared to be a universal translator, something that could allow them to understand the aliens' language. But it wasn't just a translation device. It seemed to have a deeper connection to the alien technology itself. If they could learn how to use it, they might be able to find a way to hack into the alien systems and disable their ships. The discovery sent waves of excitement through the group, but also a new wave of fear. It was their first real lead, but it came with immense risk. Alien patrols were growing more frequent, and any further attempts to infiltrate their ships could lead to death. Jack knew that their next move had to be calculated. They couldn't afford to rush into things. But they couldn't wait too long either. The aliens were clearly planning something. Humanity could sense it. The skies were darker than ever, and every day more alien ships appeared. In the quiet moments of the bunker, Jack would often reflect on the madness of it all. The aliens were unstoppable, their forces vast and powerful. Yet, as he looked at his team, his friends and comrades, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something incredible. If they could just find a way to communicate with the aliens, to understand their technology, they might stand a chance. As the days passed, the resistance grew bolder. Jack's team wasn't the only one working in secret. Small pockets of soldiers, scientists, and ordinary civilians across the globe were beginning to unite. They shared their knowledge, their resources, and their hope. What had once seemed impossible was starting to feel like a real possibility. But the alien threat was far from over. The aliens were watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. They knew humanity was growing desperate, and they were ready to crush any hope that remained. Still, the resistance fought on, their hope fueled by the possibility of victory. As long as they had breath in their bodies, they would continue to fight. The world had fallen into darkness, but a spark of rebellion was beginning to rise. The resistance had been formed, and with it, humanity's last hope for survival. The question now was, would they be able to unlock the secrets of the alien technology before it was too late? And more importantly, would they be able to overcome the most powerful force the universe had ever known? The fight for Earth had only just begun. The first strike. The days turned into weeks, and the underground resistance grew stronger. Jack Holt's team had made significant progress with the alien communication device they had recovered. After countless sleepless nights, they had managed to decipher parts of the alien language, revealing a terrifying truth. The aliens had a plan to wipe out humanity completely. They were not just here to conquer Earth, they were preparing to eliminate every last human. The Resistance knew they couldn't sit back and wait for that final strike. They had to act before it was too late. In their underground bunker, Jack paced back and forth, his mind racing. The alien ships continued to hover above the major cities, their cold, unblinking eyes watching Earth's every move. Humanity was still reeling from the devastation, but Jack could feel it, an undeniable spark of defiance that was beginning to build. "We've figured out how their ships work," Dr. Eva Patil announced, her voice filled with both excitement and dread. "But we've also learned something else. They're not just waiting to destroy us. They've started activating a global weapon system that will make the destruction permanent." Jack clenched his fists. "What do you mean? What kind of weapon?" Eva quickly explained. "The alien ships are linked to a central command, and they've activated an energy weapon, something that can target every living thing on Earth at once. It's still in its early stages, but if we don't act fast, they'll be able to deploy it at full force." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the gravity of the situation. The aliens had not just come to invade, they had come to annihilate. "We don't have much time," Jack muttered, his voice low. "We need to get to the heart of their operation and stop them from launching this weapon." But how could they possibly break into the heart of the alien command when their ships seemed impenetrable? How could they reach the control center when every move was being monitored? "We need a plan," Jack said firmly, "and we need it now." Over the next few days, Jack and his team worked tirelessly. They studied the alien technology they had salvaged, looking for any weaknesses that they could exploit. They came up with a daring plan: infiltrate one of the alien ships, access their central control systems, and disable the weapon before it could be activated. It wasn't going to be easy. The alien ships had been designed to resist human attacks, with weapons and defense systems that were far beyond anything Earth had ever known. But Jack's team was determined. They had already proven that humanity could adapt, that they could fight back against impossible odds. This would be their most dangerous mission yet, but it was the only chance they had. Meanwhile, as the Resistance prepared for their daring strike, the alien forces continued their assault. The global weapon system was slowly but surely becoming operational, and each passing day increased the pressure on Earth's defenders. The world watched as their cities fell, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. In a small safe house outside of London, a group of Resistance fighters huddled around a map of the alien ships. One of the fighters, Alex Carter, a former engineer, pointed at a glowing red dot on the map. "This is where we need to go," Alex said. "We've identified a weak point in the alien ship over Central Europe. It's not heavily guarded, but we'll need to move fast." Jack looked over the map. The location was risky, right in the heart of the alien-controlled zone, but it was their best shot. "We don't have any more time to waste," Jack said, his voice steady but urgent. "We move tonight." The team quickly gathered their weapons and supplies. The mission was simple: infiltrate the alien ship, get to the command center, and disable the global weapon system. But Jack knew it wasn't going to be that simple. They were going into the heart of enemy territory, and the chances of survival were slim. As night fell, the Resistance fighters made their way to the designated location. They moved stealthily, avoiding detection from the alien patrols overhead. The world outside had become a graveyard, and the only thing that kept them moving was the thought that they might be able to save it. Jack, Eva, Alex, and the rest of the team made it to the alien ship's outskirts. They could feel the heat radiating off the metal surface, the hum of alien energy vibrating in the air. The ship loomed overhead like a silent giant, but Jack knew they couldn't hesitate. This was their chance. They used the technology they had salvaged to hack into the ship's outer security systems, bypassing the defenses and sneaking aboard. Inside, the ship was vast and alien, with walls of smooth metallic surfaces that seemed to pulse with an energy that didn't belong to this world. It was clear that the aliens didn't build their ships for comfort. Every inch of space seemed designed for one purpose: control. "We need to find the control room. Fast," Jack whispered. The team moved cautiously, avoiding detection by the alien drones patrolling the halls. Every step felt like it could be their last, but they had come too far to back out now. As they reached the heart of the ship, they encountered their first major obstacle. A group of alien soldiers, tall and armored, were standing guard near the control center. The resistance team knew they couldn't engage in an all-out battle. They had to be quick and precise. Jack gestured for Alex to follow him, while Eva and the others provided cover. They used the element of surprise, taking down the guards one by one in silent, calculated movements. The alien soldiers didn't stand a chance. The resistance had learned to fight with precision, using their knowledge of the alien technology to outmaneuver their foes. With the guards disabled, they finally reached the control room. Jack felt a rush of adrenaline. They were so close now, but the final challenge lay ahead. The control center was heavily fortified, and the alien technology within was unlike anything they had ever encountered. "We need to hurry," Eva urged, typing quickly at the control panel. "I'm trying to access the main system, but it's more complicated than I thought." Just as she made a breakthrough, the ship's alarms blared. The aliens had detected their presence. Jack knew they had minutes, maybe even seconds, before the entire ship was on high alert. "We don't have much time," Jack said, looking at his team. "Prepare for extraction." Eva's hands flew across the keyboard. "I've almost got it. Just a few more seconds." The tension in the air was unbearable. Would they manage to stop the weapon before it was too late? Or would this be humanity's final stand? The tipping point. The ship's alarm screamed through the corridors, sending a wave of panic through the resistance fighters. Jack's heart raced as he motioned for his team to fall back into the shadows. The alien soldiers were closing in fast. Time had run out. They had made it this far, but the next few moments would determine whether humanity would have a future, or if this would be their final stand. Eva's fingers flew across the alien console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm almost there," she said through gritted teeth, her voice strained with urgency. "Just need a little more time." But Jack knew they didn't have the luxury of time. The control room was beginning to tremble as alien drones activated, and the ship's energy systems hummed louder. The aliens were preparing to launch their counterattack. Every second they wasted now brought them closer to being overwhelmed. "We can't wait," Jack muttered, drawing his weapon. "We need to move. Now." With one final glance at the control panel, Jack gave the order. "Alex, Eva, cover the exits. Everyone else, on me." The team moved quickly and silently through the dim-lit halls of the alien ship. The ship's design was sleek, its walls covered in strange alien rooms that pulsed with an eerie otherworldly light. Despite the urgency, Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. Humanity had never faced an enemy like this before. Yet, here they were, on the brink of success. Suddenly, the soft hiss of the door opening alerted them to the presence of alien soldiers. The team quickly took cover, holding their breath. The soldiers' heavy boots echoed as they patrolled the corridor. They didn't see the resistance fighters hiding in the shadows, but the tension was thick in the air. Any wrong move would lead to disaster. Jack glanced at Eva, who was still working feverishly at the control terminal, sweat dripping from her forehead. "How much longer?" he whispered, barely audible over the footsteps. "I'm in," Eva said, her voice barely a whisper. "Just need to disable the final lock." The room seemed to hold its breath as the aliens drew closer. Jack signaled his team to stay low. His heart pounded in his chest, but there was no turning back now. They had come too far, and the lives of everyone on Earth depended on the success of this mission. Eva's hand hovered over the console as she typed in the final sequence. The aliens were close. Too close. Just one wrong move, and the whole mission would be compromised. And then, with a quiet beep, the console flashed green. I did it, Eva breathed, almost in disbelief. Before Jack could respond, the entire ship shook. A loud, terrifying roar echoed through the halls, followed by a deafening alarm. The ship was responding to the breach. "Get ready," Jack barked. "Time to go." Without wasting another second, Jack and his team sprinted for the exit, but they didn't make it far. A wave of alien soldiers stormed into the hallway, weapons raised, their eyes glowing with deadly intent. The resistance team was trapped. Jack dove behind a nearby column, barely avoiding the alien blast that tore through the air where he had just been standing. Bullets from the aliens' weapons ricocheted off the walls, narrowly missing the team. They were cornered. Eva grabbed a grenade from her belt and tossed it toward the incoming soldiers. The explosion sent a shockwave through the ship, throwing the aliens off balance and giving the resistance team a brief opening. But it wouldn't last long. The aliens were quick to regroup, and their reinforcements were already on their way. "Fall back," Jack shouted, signaling for everyone to retreat further into the ship. The team moved as fast as they could, firing back as they went. It was chaos. The ship's interior had been thrown into disarray, with alarms blaring and lights flickering. The resistance had triggered the ship's defense systems, and now the aliens were determined to hunt them down. Jack's mind raced. He had to keep his team alive long enough to complete their mission. The alien weapon system was still active. This was the Resistance's last chance. "Eva," Jack shouted over the noise. "Can you disable the weapon?" Eva's face was pale, but she nodded. "I think I can, but we'll need to access the main control room again. It's risky, Jack." "We don't have a choice," Jack said, determination in his eyes. "We'll fight our way there. We're not leaving until this is over." With no time to waste, the team moved back toward the heart of the ship, where the weapon was being stored. Alien soldiers closed in on them from all sides, but Jack and his team fought with everything they had. They moved quickly, relying on their training and the element of surprise. They weren't going to give up now, not after everything they had already sacrificed. The ship shook again, and the alarms grew louder. The aliens were closing in. But just as Jack and his team reached the central control hub, a group of massive alien soldiers appeared, blocking their path. They were taller, stronger, and better armored than the other aliens, and they wielded weapons that could level entire buildings. Jack's heart raced. This was it, the final obstacle. "We take them down," Jack said, his voice unwavering. "Fight like it's our last stand." The battle erupted. The resistance fighters fought with everything they had, but the alien soldiers were relentless. Jack could hear the crackling of energy blasts, the clash of weapons, and the cries of his team. Eva was at the console again, typing furiously. "I need 2 more minutes," she shouted, her voice strained. Jack fought on, determined to keep the aliens off their backs long enough for Eva to finish. He could see the fear in his team's eyes, but they didn't back down. They were in this together, and they were fighting for humanity's survival. And then, with a final, resounding beep, the console flickered and the alarm stopped. "We did it," Eva shouted. The energy from the alien weapon flickered and went dark. The weapon, the one that could have destroyed all of humanity, was offline. But the victory was short-lived. The ship shook once more, and a powerful voice echoed through the ship's speakers. An alien voice. "You may have won this battle, humans, but the war is far from over." The voice was cold, and it sent a chill down Jack's spine. The aliens weren't retreating. This was only the beginning. The last stand. The ship groaned under the strain of the battle. Jack could feel the vibrations beneath his feet as the massive alien vessel seemed to shudder in protest. Despite the victory they had just achieved, the team was far from safe. The resistance had disabled the weapon that could have wiped out humanity, but the war was far from over. The aliens were not the type to back down easily. They had only just begun to show their true power. "We need to get out of here," Jack said, his voice grim. The team had managed to disable the weapon, but their presence on the ship was no longer a secret. The entire alien force had been alerted, and they were closing in fast. Eva, still seated at the console, looked up at Jack with a sense of urgency. "I've hacked into the ship's system, but it won't take long before they regain control. We need to leave now." Jack didn't need to be told twice. The team quickly moved into formation, weapons raised and ready for whatever came next. The ship's corridors were dark and narrow, and every corner felt like a potential ambush. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as they sprinted through the metal hallways, the sound of alien footsteps growing louder behind them. They reached the extraction point, a small shuttle bay deep inside the ship. It was a small room, but it had an escape pod capable of getting them out of the ship before it became a battlefield. However, as they entered the room, they found it surrounded by more of the massive alien soldiers. Jack's eyes narrowed. "We're not going to make it out of here without a fight." The alien soldiers, taller and more imposing than any they had encountered before, formed a blockade at the entrance. They were armed with weapons that crackled with terrifying energy, and their glowing eyes locked onto the resistance fighters, as if sizing them up. "We hold them off," Jack ordered, his voice unwavering. "Eva, Alex, get to the pod. Everyone else, with me." Without waiting for a response, Jack charged into the fray. The sound of energy blasts filled the air as the team engaged the alien soldiers, firing their weapons as quickly as they could. The resistance fighters were skilled, but the aliens were relentless. They moved with terrifying speed and precision, their strength far surpassing that of any human. Jack took cover behind a pillar, firing at the aliens as they advanced. The team fought with everything they had: bullets, grenades, and every piece of alien technology they had managed to steal. But it wasn't enough. For every alien they took down, two more appeared. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Eva, hands shaking, quickly typed into the control panel of the escape pod, trying to override the ship's systems to get it working. Sweat dripped down her forehead as the aliens closed in. "Just a little more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the screen. "Come on." Jack fired again, narrowly missing one of the alien soldiers. He could feel the exhaustion creeping into his muscles. The aliens didn't tire. They didn't hesitate. But the humans did. Every blast took more energy from the resistance, and they were running out of time. "I'm in," Eva shouted, her voice filled with both relief and fear. The escape pod systems hummed to life. "Everyone, now," Jack yelled. "Fall back to the pod." The team broke off from the firefight, making their way toward the pod as the alien soldiers moved in to intercept them. It was a desperate sprint, with gunfire and explosions ringing out around them. Alex was the first to reach the pod, pulling open the hatch as the others made it to the entrance. They were almost there, but not all of them would make it. Jack was the last to reach the pod. As he sprinted toward the door, an alien soldier appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Without thinking, Jack tackled the creature, knocking it to the ground. The alien's weapon fired wildly, grazing Jack's arm as he struggled to gain control. "Go," Jack shouted, his voice trained. "Get the pod started." Eva and Alex, already inside, pushed the buttons frantically. Come on," Eva cried, her fingers flying across the control panel. Jack finally got the alien's weapon out of its hand and disabled it. Panting, he turned and sprinted toward the pod. But just as he reached the entrance, the pod's doors began to close. "No," Jack shouted. "Open the doors." He dove forward, barely slipping through the closing gap as the doors locked behind him. The pod rumbled to life, and Jack breathed a sigh of relief, though it was short-lived. The aliens were still on the ship, and they wouldn't stop until they hunted every last human. As the pod shot out of the alien ship and into the cold void of space, Jack turned to see the massive vessel shrinking in the distance. His chest heaved with exhaustion, his mind racing. The mission was a success, but at what cost? "We did it," Eva said quietly, looking out the small window at the alien ship in the distance. "We stopped their weapon, but they're still out there." Jack nodded, his face serious. "This isn't over. The aliens will come for us again, but now we know they can be beaten. We've survived this, and we'll fight to the end." The resistance fighters sat in silence, each lost in their thoughts. They had just completed what many thought was impossible. They had fought back against an enemy that was seemingly invincible, and they had come out alive. But Jack knew that this was just the beginning. The aliens would return, and the resistance would be ready. They would have to be. Earth's future depended on it. In the distance, a faint flash of light caught his eye. The alien ship had not been destroyed. It was retreating. And that meant one thing. The war was far from over. The reckoning begins. The escape pod glided through space, its small, fragile form darting away from the massive alien ship that was quickly becoming a speck in the distance. The crew was silent, their bodies battered and weary from the intense battle. As the pod systems hummed softly, Jack couldn't help but glance out the window, his thoughts heavy. They had survived, this time. But the aliens weren't defeated. They had only been delayed. Jack looked around the cramped interior. Eva, Alex, and the rest of the team sat hunched, eyes wide with exhaustion but filled with a flicker of hope. They had managed to stop the alien weapon. But Jack knew that wasn't the end of the story. Not by a long shot. "We did it," Eva said, her voice low and quiet, as though trying to reassure herself as much as the others. "We stopped them, for now." But Jack shook his head, his expression hardening. "That's not enough. This war isn't over." The silence in the pod was thick, the reality of what they had just done slowly sinking in. The alien ship was gone, but that was only one of their fleets. Jack had seen enough to know that the invincible alien force had far more ships, far more power than they had ever imagined. The battle on the alien ship had been a small taste of what was to come. The true fight was still ahead. "We've got no time to rest," Jack said, his voice now filled with a hard edge. "The aliens are going to come for us again. And when they do, we'll be ready. But we need to regroup, figure out what's next." The resistance team had done well to escape, but they were far from safe. The alien force had already been alerted to humanity's interference, and Jack knew their next move would be swift and brutal. The aliens wouldn't allow this to go unpunished. But for now, they needed to make it back to Earth. It wasn't a victory celebration that awaited them. It was the calm before the storm. Jack had no illusions about that. The journey back to Earth was long and tense. The pod systems were operating at full capacity, but they were still vulnerable to any stray threats. Jack kept his eyes peeled, scanning for any sign of alien ships. The last thing they needed was a final ambush before they made it home. But luck was on their side. For now. The pod broke through Earth's atmosphere, and the familiar blue of the planet below came into view. The team exhaled in unison as the threat of the alien fleet seemed to fade into the distance. "We're almost there," Alex muttered, his voice barely audible as he stared out the small window. Jack's mind was already racing ahead, preparing for what lay ahead. The human race had never faced anything like this. The aliens had shown their strength, their power, and now they knew that humanity was no longer a passive target. But what would Earth do next? The resistance was small, its resources limited, but they had one thing the aliens didn't: the will to fight. As the pod touched down on Earth, the team disembarked, their minds still reeling from the recent battle. They were met by a group of high-ranking military officers who had been waiting for their return. The officers were serious, their faces grim, as they took in the resistance team's condition. "You made it," one of the officers said. "We were starting to wonder if we'd ever see you again." "We made it," Jack replied, his voice steady but weary. "But the real fight is just beginning." The officer nodded. "We've been monitoring the alien movements. They're planning something big. But you've given us a chance. We've got a foothold now." Jack turned to his team, a new sense of resolve filling him. This is just the start. We've got to prepare for the war that's coming. The aliens won't stop until they've wiped us out. But now we know we can beat them. We've seen what they're capable of. And we've seen their weaknesses. Eva spoke up, her voice determined. We're not going to let them win. We've got the technology now, and we'll use it to fight back. Jack nodded in agreement. The battle ahead would be unlike anything they had ever faced, but they weren't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. Days turned into weeks as the resistance worked tirelessly to prepare for the next phase of the war. With the information they had gathered from the alien ship, they began developing new weapons, enhancing their defenses, and building alliances with other factions around the world. The battle wasn't just about winning. It was about survival. The world began to change. Governments rallied together, putting aside old rivalries in the face of a common enemy. Humanity had always been divided, but the alien threat had united them in a way that nothing else ever had. And through that unity, they began to stand a chance. Jack continued to lead his team, traveling the globe to share their knowledge, train new soldiers, and rally resistance groups. They knew that the aliens wouldn't give up, but neither would humanity. Then one day, Jack received an encrypted message. His eyes widened as he read it, the message more chilling than anything he had ever imagined. We know what you've done. The war is far from over. This is only the beginning. Jack felt the weight of the words sink into him. It was a reminder, an ominous one, that the aliens had barely scratched the surface of their power. This was just the start. They would be back, and they would come in full force. But this time, humanity was ready.